guys. Taxation is theft. And so is wage slavery. Oh my god. Okay, so I don't go that far. I don't say that. But I had an interesting conversation with somebody today. This morning. I know it's only 8. I'm already having conversations with people. And so this guy, he wasn't really proposing a solution other than tearing down the entire system and replacing it with something else. Which, yeah, sign me up for that. Wait, what are we replacing it with? Oh, we'll figure it out later. Excellent plan. So he posted a meme saying, you know, if you make a product, you get paid $100. The product is worth $1,000. It's worth $1,000. It doesn't sell for $1,000. It's worth $1,000. It's very important. And you get $100 out of the deal, and then the tax man takes $10, so you only get $90. And if you're mad at the tax man, then you're mad at the wrong person. Okay. So many things wrong with that. First of all, nobody gets paid $100 to make a $1,000 product. Oh, except maybe in the pharmaceutical industry, where everything is a monopoly and monopoly prices are protected by the government. That's a different story. But iPhones, for example, now you might talk about the assembly line workers who build 1,000 phones a day and don't get paid $100. But that only makes up a very small fraction of the supply chain, because the reality is, if you buy a $1,000 iPhone, the cost of production might be, I think on the first one it was more than half. It was like $600. I don't know. It could still be up there. And that $600 included the wages of the people assembling the phone. But you also have to consider maybe the screen cost $100. They bought the screen for $100 from a supplier. Now that supplier sold that screen for $100. They didn't just pull it out of thin air. They had to pay people to make them. Right? So this whole idea that you're getting $100 to make $1,000 worth of thing is kind of insane, because that's not where the entire cost of production goes. It's excluding things like marketing. Why does Apple sell 1 billion iPhones? I hate Apple, by the way. Now. I used to love them. Why do they sell 1 billion iPhones? Because they have a marketing department. Those people got to get paid. They're not on the assembly line, but they got to get paid. When you go to the store and you buy an iPhone, do you pay for the iPhone and then pay for shipping and handling, even though the phone was shipped all the way around the world to that store so that you can pick it up? No. The cost of shipping and handling is built into the price. The salesman who's there to teach you how to use the product, he's got to get paid. The Geek Squad or the Genius Bar, whatever, those people got to get paid. You get to bring in your phone and have it looked at for free. You get free customer service, free support. Those people got to get paid. The people who made the software, the people who continue to update the software after you bought the phone, they all got to get paid. And you don't want to have to pay them directly, right? You just want to pay for the phone once, and then the business should be able to stand behind its product. And to be able to stand behind its product, they need to overcharge you. Not so that they can pay the assemblers more, but so that they have cash reserves to serve the product. And then, of course, there's the profit. Yep, they want to make a profit. That's why they made the phone in the first place, because they want to make a profit. You can go back to your old Nokia 8650 if you want. You can get those pretty cheap. They're already assembled. You don't have to steal wage labor from anybody. No, but you want the iPhone. So, there's a lot more to that equation than you getting $100 out of producing 1,000. Something else that's been spread around many times is, okay, the CEO of McDonald's, let's say he makes $100 million a year. He's also got 1 million employees. So if you were to take that $100 million a year and divide it equally among all of the employees, guess what? Each employee gets a $100 a year raise. Not something to brag about. Now, I'm not saying the CEO of McDonald's deserves $100 million, but that's the position he's worked his way into. Because for whatever reason, shareholders and blah, 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 and all this other stuff decided, hey, yeah, you're going to be the one to run the company because we think you know how to do that. Now, you ask a lot of people who work at these little, fast food chains and, assembly line workers and all this, can you do the whole thing by yourself? And most of them say yes. And that might be true. But where did you get the skills to learn how to do that, right? So let's say you've got a guy working at McDonald's as bottom level employee, and he says, I know how to manage this restaurant. I know how to run this restaurant. First of all, we have to realize every single one of those employees is going to say that, even though they don't. And you can quiz them on things like, how do you know when it's time to re-up your supply of inventory, or blah, blah, blah. How do you prepare for seasonal peaks? These types of things, which they might not have an answer to, but let's say they do. Where did they learn that information? They might have gone to school for it and learned it from a textbook, but that's not really real world experience, so that's only going to get you so far. They might have learned it on the job, because job experience is invaluable. And so, you don't know how to manage a fast food chain because you're just this brilliant person. You know how to manage it because you took the shitty job, working for the shitty pay, just to duke it out long enough to say, oh, well, I've learned so much, it's time for me to move up. So move up. So move up. Now, one of the other things this guy talked about was, and he admitted it was a shitty meme at this point. So he said, yeah, but the point is, we have to work. And I'm like, why don't you just not work? Well, because we have to pay the landlord. You don't have to pay the landlord. You want a fancy-ass apartment, and think about this. The apartments you're renting are fancy-ass apartments. It's a bunch of wood that was put together by a bunch of people who, by the way, you don't want to pay. You don't want to pay those people to assemble a new house for you. You don't want to do it yourself. You want somebody else to assemble a house for you. And it's easy to sit around and say, yeah, but there's already so many houses that are assembled and already made, I should just be able to take one. Yeah, but you're still taking something that you didn't create. And that happens to be the circumstance that we're in, but if that weren't the circumstance, then what would be your solution? Oh, but that's not, that's a what if, begging the question. It's stealing. Now, I don't like the circumstance that we're in, but my point is to say, what is the fundamental flaw in the system that we have? The fundamental flaw is not that there are jobs that pay too little. That's an effect of the system that we have. That's an effect. That's an effect of being too many people who want jobs and too few people who want to hire people. Why wouldn't people want to hire more people? Well, because it's expensive, because of minimum wage and taxes and laws and regulations and requirements and benefits and all these other things they got to pay for. That's expensive. So people want to hire fewer people. There are less businesses in business because a lot of them get shut down because they're unable to pay for licensing and taxes and all this other stuff. That's a thing. So, and then we have this concept where everybody is looking for a job. Everybody must be employed. We must have 100% employment, 0% unemployment. We all must work. Why? to pay rent, to pay landlords. Why do we have to pay landlords? Because there's no place where we can go to just live. And that doesn't mean you have to have a house made for you. And I've seen this in Mexico, where people will just find some land and start building on it. They'll call it their own and start building on it. Like squatters. It's not glamorous. And so this guy compared it to let's all go Bear Grylls it. Okay, so what you're saying is you don't want to work for somebody else because that's exploitive, but you don't want to work for nature, for food and shelter, because that's just ridiculous. You don't want to work for a job for money. You don't want to work for nature for survival. You just don't want to work. Now, I can sympathize with that. I don't like working. But that's why I'm working really hard right now, making as much money as I possibly can, so I can save it and retire, so I can enjoy my life and not have to work, and let someone else do the work for a while, and let them save up the money. Let them buy some property so that they have a very fancy shelter to live in. But this guy just wants to not even work to build that for himself. He wants that handed to him. Now, here's what's interesting. He doesn't want to work for money, which means he doesn't have any money to pay for food, but he doesn't want to work to grow or hunt or gather his own food. Where's his food going to come from? Obviously, it's going to have to come from other people, right? There's going to have to be farmers who he's not going to pay because he doesn't want the job. And doesn't that make him the exploiter of labor? Because what's that food really worth? A week's worth of food, let's say it's $100. You want to pay, it's worth $100, you want to pay $0, which means the farmer is going to have to get paid $0. And somehow you're not an exploiter of labor? Explain to me how that makes any sense. Now, of course, they could say, oh yeah, but the farmers don't actually do that much work because now we have machinery that can do all the work for us. Okay. Who makes the machines? Who operates the machines? Who maintains the machines? And if they don't require any of that, why don't you have one? Right? Because if you don't have to pay anybody to manufacture the machine that grows the food, well, then you should have one, right? I mean, duh. Nobody has to get paid. Why? Just pull it out of thin air. Make it yourself. Why not? Oh, because you don't know how. But you don't want to pay someone else. What the hell? Oh. I thought I saw a dog crawling under the bus. I think it was a person. Yeah, so the moral of the story, guys, is yes, your labor is being exploited. But it's not because somebody wants to exploit it, it's because you submit yourself to that. And the reason you submit yourself to that is because you have to. And the reason you have to is because it's your only option. And the reason it's your only option is because of the government. Because of their shitty education system, which is paid for by your taxes. And because of their tax system, which even if you had the education makes it impossible for you to go and survive any other way. So stop blaming your boss. Here's another thing a lot of people don't get. McDonald's is a franchise, so people own McDonald's, like individual McDonald's, right? And they start it as if it's any other small little restaurant that they would start, but They're expecting to make a profit, but they get to use the name McDonald's, which means they have a built-in market. They get all kinds of, extra benefits, free advertising. You've got corporate CEOs doing the advertising for you. Oh, there's a McDonald's. I know that place. Let's go eat there. They're all owned by different people. I mean, someone might own like 1,000 of them, but it's a franchise. That's how it works. And so you have these little individual owners who want to open a McDonald's and make some money. And they pay their employees minimum wage, which is what, like, I don't know, 20 grand a year before tax. Yeah, I know, you get your paycheck and it's less, but you cost the business probably 20 to 30 grand a year on minimum wage. 20 to 30 grand a year. Let's just say it's 20. And let's say you've got 10 people working there in shifts. It's more than that. That's $300,000. Now, there's expenses. Let's just say the business makes $1 million. Sign breaks. Who's going to pay for that? You want to take a pay cut that week because someone threw a rock at the sign and broke it? Are you going to take a pay cut that week? Because the owner's going to take a pay cut that week. Because he's got to pay for the sign. Right? The employees... Guys, I would love to pay you your $500 this week, but unfortunately somebody smashed one of the signs and we have to fix it. What are the employees going to say? Man, fuck the sign. I don't want to pay for the sign. Right? They don't want to take that cut. Pay me anyway. Okay, fine. If there's a slow week, COVID comes around, people still want to get paid, right? It doesn't matter. And see, that's the deal. That's actually the beauty of your deal. And I'm not saying minimum wage is a glorious wage. And I say it's not because of government. But the beautiful thing about that is your wage is consistent. You show up, you get paid. Now, of course, you got to show up and do your job or else you get fired. But you show up and you get paid. There's no, well, what if the customers don't show up? That's what your boss is worrying about. What if the customers don't show up? What if a hurricane comes through and wrecks the shop? You might have insurance. You might have to pay a deductible. Insurance doesn't just cover everything. You might have a deductible. What if somebody breaks one of your signs? Your insurance rates are going to go up if you pay for it, or if you have them pay for it, so you just got to pay for it. You take the cut. And again, well, because it's a franchise, the owner of the McDonald's is now paying to the corporate McDonald's every month. I don't know what their deal is, but that's why the CEO of McDonald's and the corporation of McDonald's makes so much money. Because of all the franchises giving them money. Because they are the supplier. And so you could argue that the corporate McDonald's is exploiting the franchise owners. Right? Because the franchise owners are, they're running the whole business. They're paying for the supplies. And somehow, the big corporate is making money off of that. But it's not like the big corporate isn't doing anything. They're telling them how to run their business. And the reason they're doing that is, imagine if you went into a McDonald's and the coffee tasted a little bit different than it did at some other place. And sometimes this stuff happens and people get really pissed off about it. Imagine you go to a different McDonald's and, oh, well, we have the McRib is back, but we don't carry it. Imagine you go and you want some chicken nuggets and they're like, yeah, but we don't use chicken here. We actually have turkey nuggets. Right? People would show up at different McDonald's and be like, wait a minute, this isn't the same thing. That consistency is part of the organization of the big master corporation. And this makes your experience good. This makes sure you know that every single McDonald's that you go to anywhere in the world, or at least anywhere in the U.S., you're gonna have access to the same things. The prices are gonna be the same. Probably, it might vary a little bit, I guess. That's that. The quality, you know exactly what you're gonna get. That is what the big master corporation brings to the table. And if you didn't want that, if the franchise owners didn't want that, They could create, yeah, turkey nugget sounds gross, right? You could create your own restaurant, right? The franchise owners can create a different restaurant. It doesn't have to be a McDonald's, where they have complete control. But then they're starting from scratch. Who's going to just be driving by and say, oh, look, a hamburger restaurant? Some people. And if they're really good, because McDonald's isn't that great, let's be honest, if they're really good and people like it, they might get a name for themselves. They might be really successful, but they might not. There's a risk. And on day one, they're going to have a lot of trouble getting people to go there, because I've never heard of that place. I don't know. Is it any good? I don't know. I don't know anybody who's been there. And yeah, some people are just going to walk in and try it. It's a hamburger. What could go wrong? How could they possibly screw that up? But what if they're having trouble because, they just started up on their own? McDonald's makes you have $1 million in the bank just to open a franchise. Why? Because they want to make sure that you have enough money to pay for running the business at a loss. Nobody knows the new location is there yet. Things happen. They want to know you're able to keep the business fully staffed, even if there's no business. Even if there's no customers, you have to be fully staffed. Now imagine somebody who just started a small restaurant. They didn't have $1 million to make big fancy signs and buy really nice furniture and the menus and everything all perfect. They didn't have all that. They don't have a lot of money to make sure they're fully staffed when there's no money coming in because they don't have any sales yet. So imagine the first person walks in and says, I want a hamburger. Yeah, let me get that ready for you. 20 minutes later, it's almost done. I'm sorry, we're just a little understaffed right now. We're out of tomatoes because we haven't been stockpiling them because we don't know how many customers to expect. That's a shitty experience. You're going to have a shitty review. You're going to tell your friends. Nobody's going to go to the restaurant. That's a problem you face. That's a real problem. And so McDonald's solves that problem. If you're a business owner and you want to open a successful restaurant, open a McDonald's. Everything's done for you. They just have a formula. All you got to do is have some money to get in. But you're going to be making money for them. But you're guaranteed success. Almost. So, these are important things to consider. And even in the mom and pop burger shop, right, where you have Bob's Burgers. You have, you're just starting up. You don't have all that money coming in. You walk into that restaurant. How many people are going to walk into that restaurant? If you're earning minimum wage right now, would you walk into that restaurant and say, yeah, look, I don't want to get paid minimum wage. Just pay me a percentage of the profit from the business. How many of you want to do that? It's a brand new business. There is no profit history. You don't know how much they're going to make the next month because they didn't make anything the month before. They're not even open yet. Are you going to commit to that? You got to pay your rent. No. You want a job where you can calculate and say, okay, I'm going to be making $7 an hour. This guy tells me I'm going to be working 40 hours a week. I can do the math. I know exactly what my paycheck is going to be. Except I don't know how to calculate how much they're going to hold out in taxes. And they won't tell you that because they probably don't even know. They just have an accountant do that shit for them, or they put it into a program that does it for them. But long story short, you want to know that you're going to be making enough money to pay your rent. You're not going to take a gamble on taking a job and getting paid in a percentage unless you're living with your parents and you have that freedom. Then you might. But most people want the money. Most people don't have any faith in other people starting a business. I mean, I've been through that a million times. When I was a kid, I was making websites for people. And a million times, man, people would come to me with these brilliant ideas. I have the ideas for the next MySpace. It's going to be amazing. I want you to build it for me. I know it's going to take you 2 years working around the clock, but I'll give you a percentage of everything that it makes. I'll give you 5% of the company. You want me to work for 2 years for free for 5% of a company? And what makes me think you're going to be successful? And I fell for this a few times. I didn't work for no 2 damn years, but I did a little bit of free work. Like, yeah, okay, fine, I'll put together a website. young and naive, and I did that. And then what happened? These people who put nothing in of their own, and then they had all these other projects, and then they had their own day jobs. They were just like, okay, cool, yeah, it's done. Okay, I'm going to go sell this. And then they tried to sell it to one person. And then they were like, no, we don't like that. And then they were like, oh, it's okay. We'll still make money off of this. And then nothing ever happens. They get discouraged. They get distracted with other things. This is normal. We're not trained for this in school. They don't teach us these things, right? They just teach us, just go get a job. And believe me, when I was doing all this shit, all my friends were saying, dude, why don't you just get a job? Because I was trying to be an entrepreneur. I knew a job is like, oh, well, that's a cap. I wanted to do something bigger. The problem was I was working with a lot of people who wanted to do something bigger who weren't capable of that. It's a huge risk that I took. And yeah, I made some really stupid risks because I didn't know any better. But those risks are still risks. Even if Steve Jobs himself came to me and said, hey, we're starting this new thing. I want you to work for free for 2 years. How do I know? How do I know Steve Jobs' next big thing is going to be a success or a flop? You don't. Mark Zuckerberg could come along. We're building Facebook too. I'll give you 10% of it. It could be worth $100 billion. You might put in a week's worth of work or a month's worth of work, assuming you don't have rent to pay, or you can make it by for the next month without having to worry about not having any income. You might be able to put in a month's worth of free work, but 2 years? Not unless you got a lot saved up. And on a gamble like that, that's a big gamble. That's a big gamble. So, these are all the things that these people aren't taking into consideration when they talk about how easy it is to start and run a business and how, oh, well, I'm only getting paid $100. Yeah, there's a lot of other people getting paid too. You're not the only person running the company just because you work on the assembly line. It's fucking ridiculous. Anyway, guys, hopefully I've armed you with some great information that you can use to fight these arguments should you ever encounter them. Hopefully, if you use these arguments and you think that that your boss is exploiting your labor, and that's the only problem with the world, because I did say they are exploiting your labor, but not because that's all they want to do, because that's the world we live in because of the government. Let's fix the government problem. Hopefully, if that is your mindset, you've learned a few things and it might have changed how you think a little bit. Anyway, guys, I'm out of here. Taxation is Theft. I will see you possibly tonight on a podcast with Joe McHugh, presidential candidate, former presidential candidate. We talked last night about some really awesome, interesting subjects, and we might be on the Taxation is Theft show tonight talking about all that kind of stuff. So stay tuned for that. It'll be awesome. Catch you guys later.